All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So a couple things. ProNeta. If you don't have ProNeta, you need to get it.
It's on that V15 VM, right?
I'm not sure. If not, it's a quick free download. Yeah. I've got it on the host just because I can route through to find things. And what's good about it is it gives you this Excel. You can double click and change the actual Profinet name and the IP address. I've even saw Rockwell Mac IDs, and it gives it to you with actual device type and everything instead of just you don't know if it's a PC or whatever, and it'll show you, because what you'll want to do eventually is do topology. It shows you the port address, and then if you bring focus to it, you can actually get the port details. And for topology, that's a big deal, making sure that the cables are plugged into the right place. Another neat thing is you can do things like flash LED. All the LEDs will flash. So if you had a panel full of 10 drives, from here you can know which one, and make sure they're exactly the right IP address associated to the right drive. So that's really handy. So once you get that, you establish it. You can force Profinet names and IP addresses from here if you need. In my particular case, when I built this small system for testing here, I've got just the CPU and just one G120, but I did create topology. And in topology, it will not drag the line like when you associate a subnet. So I have a sync domain with a subnet. Topology, what that's going to do is if you've drawn topology in the PLC, is going to hand out the Profinet name and IP addresses so that I don't have to right click and say assign Profinet name or do it from the online diagnostics feature. It'll give it everything. And so if you swap the cables up, it'll re-Profinet name, re-IP address, everything in the panel. But what it knows, if I was to take this wire and wire it in port 2, it'd bark and not work. It's really important because it supports device replacement, right? So we've got now where almost, even with the 1200, almost everything we do, if it has Profinet anything on it, we're using topology. All right, pretty powerful stuff. And then there's some further features in here that kind of becomes important in the properties of the CPU. And you see they've added tons of the first thing I do is change the CPU right here from it's set to warm restart, start up in the last mode. You don't want that ever, especially with 1200 where you don't have a key switch at all to get to it. You always want to change that. First thing I do is change that to warm restart run. Configuration time. The PLC, if you remember the old S7300s, they would boot up and you'd have to wait about a minute and a half before they would actually Profibus would kick in and take off and go to running. You can actually increase it now. And so you can come in here, I've got it set to 20 seconds instead out of the box, 60 seconds. And so if you don't have devices that are going to create a lag to boot and then come up without fault, you can increase the time here so the machine powers up and goes to run and starts to communicate Profinet or Profibus details. You can increase that time here. Those two things I usually bump up right out of the gate. If I had third-party Profinet slave that was slow to boot, like a Festo valve bank, you may leave it at 60 or even increase it. And what that will do is it'll make it so that you don't, the CPU boot up and then it boots up with a whole bunch of faults because it don't see the slaves yet. Exactly. So even though you have the hardware interrupts to not go in stop mode, you're still a diagnostics buffer. It's going to just get flooded with this junk that it's not the case, right? Of course, as you remember, enable the clock memory byte and the use of system memory. That gives you the first scan bit, gives you the always on bit by checking these. Of course, I got to be offline to be able to turn this stuff on. Those are probably the most fastest things that I would do with the 1200 or 1500. So now what we do with topology set, you check support device replacement without exchangeable media, and I often select permit overriding the device names of all I/O devices. What that does is if you've got a ET200SP remote I/O brand new in the box, you have a G120, maybe you want the drive you were using, elsewhere to now be the right drive to replace as a spare part. If you check this permit overriding the device names of all assigned I/O devices, the CPU acts as a server and it will hand out the names. So it's all about how the media is configured in topology view. Mm-hmm. When you drug I had to physically go manually do this to tell it how the wires were going to be connected. And then if I start swapping, it'll rename every time you cycle power, it'll rename the device if you change the wiring. Mm-hmm. So you can literally, toggle what drive's running what motor, I guess you'd say, from there. So when you create a G120 now, this I think as a version 14 started doing this, it automatically gives you Telegram 1 for your control unit. Mm-hmm. Telegram 1's a real basic telegram that you probably remember some of the servo stuff and other legacy G drives. We used Telegram 111 a lot back in the day. It gives you a whole bunch of words of data. With a G120 standard drive, all you care about speed, start, stop, general fault, velocity, error. Telegram 1 does all that. So it'll automatically map Telegram 1, and you can come in and modify it offline if you want a different telegram. So if you wanted torque, you may go to Telegram 3 so you can get extended bytes. Mm-hmm. and get the torque data brought back from the right parameter. So as you see in here, you have now a kind of a fancy Telegram creation window inside the properties of the control unit. So you create the Profinet control unit. It is a safety Profinet PN based on what we're talking about. It has to be so that we can do safety over the Telegram. But any standard G120 with Profinet, even if it's not safe, uses Telegram 1. What that allow you to do is you can use a technology object, or what I like to use is the Sina speed, Sina parameter. They're real simple, and why you would use the Sina blocks over a technology object, because technology has all the GUI interface and control panel. The move velocity that you'd have to move or jog, you can't have the block activated and change the speed. So give you an example, I can't enable the motor and it be running. I'm running it, I commanded 1100 RPMs, okay, and it's running at 1100. Well, with a technology object, I can't just command a different frequency and it follow it. Yeah. Now you can, but you have to repulse the enable act. You have to enable the block every time you do it. And that's logic that you shouldn't have to do. So to get to there, it's in every library block inside of Portal. It's under drive library, 1200, 1500, master copies, Sinamics, and then you have all your Sina in feed, Sina parameter. And this will work for doing S drives and G drives. So if you had a servo bank with S120s, you can enable the in feed and tell the amplifier to move to position with the Sina blocks as well. Or you can use the IEC open blocks in the technology objects. I found it for general purpose stuff that the Sina block does everything you need to do. So no matter what you do, and usually what I do is I get the Sina block talking and get the motor commissioned in the Explorer tree, finding the actual drive and using start drive here. Yeah. The first thing you do is go through a commissioning, and we can kind of jump through it real quick. First thing you're going to do is go through commissioning wizard, and I'm just going to, you can modify it. You definitely want to be online. Every time you start commissioning, when you're online, you have to go through every parameter page.
Yeah, you got to go through each step.
You can't
even
just
if you
cancel
want to
back out.
modify it like one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and you can't cancel it.
Can't cancel it. You can't just say, oh, shoot, I didn't mean to do this. Bear with me, this VM's a little sluggish.
Yeah, we didn't do Profinet safety in for Global Textiles, but we did the regular safety inputs on it.
You did the hardwired, and most of these safety ones you can use.
Configure, yeah.
Yeah.
Each time you change a parameter here, you have to go recommission.
You don't have to do it with this Profi Safe like this. I did find that out. So if you start basic safety commissioning, you have to run back through that. You don't have to do it anymore in V15. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And it will get a little sluggish here. I've got the drive running from the Sinablock. You can hear it in the background. What this means is if I was using a technology object, I can set the velocity ramps in the technology objects to create a ramp profile and send to the drive. Typically with a G120, you can just set a ramp up and down time and just be done with it. So that's what that means. It's getting the ramp from the drive or getting the ramp from the PLC. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little slow when the drive's in operation. What we're trying to get to is to here where I have safety function block with e-stops activated, and then we're going to use a telegram block just like the Sina speed block, but what it does is it maps another telegram. It maps bits and bytes and words directly over the Profinet telegram to the drive, and so it is already a pre-commissioned safety block. So they created it as an F block, which, you know, when you create new DBs and FBs, it asks you, but it's a Siemens, and they also give you all the tag UDT, so you get the PLC data type to go along with it, and that becomes important when you have to go to the peripheral output, because the drive telegram actually looks like peripheral output. See this P pound Q whatever it is, and how to figure that out is a bit of a trick. So that's a big deal in what we're doing here. Okay, so this is where it selects. It's getting field bus, so it's saying we're going to talk Profinet, and we're going to use Telegram 1 out of the box. That doesn't, you can leave that even though we're going to add Telegram 30 to make it Profi safe. Okay, NEMA motor, 220 volt line side voltage on the 400 volt power modules, which is mainly what we do. Just be cautious. That usually comes 400 volt out of the box, and some motors it'll run some motors fine even though you don't change that incoming parameter, and some motors are so sensitive that if you don't set it to the 480 volt line, it don't compensate for that different DC bus voltage that you're actually going to have on the output. That actually scales the your fault for the DC bus. So
scales it down?
Scales it up and down for what it should be set for your line. All right. We have no motor filter here. It does not ask you about a line filter. You can modify that in the parameter pages, but it asks you about the motor side. And typically what we use is 1.3 on the Henrys there, if we use any at all on the motor side. They've extended the length that you can do on these drives. I think it's 200 feet now without a output reactor. It's gotten pretty long. I just put together a quote for a S120 servo system, and with an output reactor with a kilowatt range, which is real low, it was like 0.4 kilowatt servos. I could go 427 feet with the cables, and we had to. This building has to go down in the basement and through a bunch of cable tray and back into electrical room. Okay, so I commissioned the motor parameters. Sorry it's taking so long. I think it's.
Did you see what we had to do with those 525s? Instead of putting a line reactor on each one, which is recommended by the manual, there's a little footnote on it that says as long as the supply transformers under like 25 kVA, isolation transformers aren't recommended or whatever.
Mhm.
So we just put a 480 to 480 1-to-1 isolation transformer, put all the drives on one isolation transformer.
And didn't do reactors in the
we
panel.
didn't do individual ones.
Yeah.
Save a little bit of money and save some. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Hello? Which one? Okay. Pick up what?
Okay, the ramps,
I gotta go.
the reference speed and the maximum speed. This is pretty important. And your base motor RPM. This is where you'd set your reference speed. So mine's 1350. A standard 4-pole motor usually 1750.
Mhm.
These almost always want to match so that the scale at which that you're commanding an RPM matches. So like what happened last week, I needed to overspeed my motor. I wanted to go all the way up to 3,000 RPM. I was commanding the 3,000 on the sinus speed block. It was saying it was going to 3,000, but that's really not what the drive was doing because I didn't have this parameter and that parameter. This is parameter 1082. This is parameter 2,000. They need to equal. So I came in here and set this one and that one to 3,000, and it'll overspeed. And it's common to want to go over 60 hertz or whatever your base frequency needs to be for your RPM in your motor.
And it does it based on RPM, not on hertz.
Yes. Yeah, they change things. It kind of screws a lot of people up, but everything's done now in RPM, which, it's 6.1.
Yeah.
All right. I've already done a motor identification, so I just set that 0, hit next, finish. All right. Let's go in here and turn this dude on. I'm going to click offline. That way I can make changes. What we're going to do is go back into the hardware. We brought focus to that individual drive. And then now offline from the actual hardware, I'm still online with the drive. See where it says add telegram? If you click, not right click, but click in there now, it's hidden. You say add safety telegram. Can't.
So you don't drag it over.
You don't drag it over. It took me a little bit to. Yeah, I mean, it's just different than how it's always used, how it used to be. So, and it's not a right. You would assume it'd be a right click to find it, right?
I was programming in Graph yesterday, and it took me forever to get to like the overhead view, the 1,000-foot view of the graph, because I was stuck into like the transition logic, ladder logic level. I couldn't figure out how to back out for the longest time. It's like, damn, TI portal, there's so many things to click on.
What's important here is this is peripheral data, as I showed you before in another project. That's where we're going to say p-pound : whatever the actual physical address. They have to match. So for 6 bytes, I've got bytes 0 through 5, and it starts at 0. So that's important.
What's the p-pound : thing you're talking about? That's like a pointer, right?
It's pointing directly to peripheral data.
Yeah. Address.
Yep. And you can't just type that in. So it's used to in early versions of Portal, you could address directly to it. You can't now. And this was another thing that took me a little bit on the job site to figure out that. So that's important to keep up with. So now we have Telegram 30 commission, and I have that. So the ideal here is I'm going to go into my safety block. So if I come back up here to where my safety function block is, the main safety function block, I've already drug out the libraries. Now this library is a download that I'm about to show you. It's the L Drive Safe library. I sent in that meeting request. If you click here, this takes you directly to the support page where you can download it and explains what it does. One really neat thing is they have an integrated winder calculator in here for doing winding and tension applications. But you download the library file and then just open it in Portal. So you would do it by, just saying open here, global library. And then what's important is which flavor you open. So I went under the 1500 is different than the 1200. We did a 1200 and a 1500 in the same day, and they will not work. And I had another guy working on it, and that's why I had him stuck, as he was picking the 1500 one out of my project. So what I did is I drug the telegram for the G, see Sina G and Sina S. That's for the Sinamics S drive. This is for a G drive. I drug it out in my block, so it's already sitting over here. Or you can drag it directly and drop it in your code. And then this is a data type. So what you would do is come over to PLC data types, and you see I've already drug it over here. So I literally just clicked and drug it over. Yep. So it exists. I'm not going to do that. So we're going to leave it what it is. So now that telegram block is sitting in my safety folder, I can drag it out here, drop it, make it a multi-instance or single instance. I have a FB, so it's fine. And now to enable safe torque off, I can actually use the output status of the e-stop block as an example. It's all on how you want to do your system, right? And then I'm done other than an acknowledgement, and I'm going to use the same global acknowledge block that I used to reset my e-stop circuit. I'm going to reset the drive from an e-stop. Okay. And if you notice on the front of the G120, there's no amber lights. Amber lights are, there's an amber safe light and an amber safe active light. And what that does, it tells you that you have safety either enabled if there's any amber light. If it's flashing, that means it's in a safe mode, so an e-stop's been pressed. If it's solid amber, it kind of looks like a fault to me on the device, but it is what it is.
Yeah, it means it's good, right?
It means it's good. Yeah. The solid amber is good. So now it's how do I get that output peripheral word 0 onto the button? I can't come in here and say p-pound : it just won't work. You can't physically type it. You can't map it. So here's what I found. I went to PLC tags. Okay. And in PLC tags, I created a tag group. I just said add new tag table. Okay. And then in my tag table, I'll call it BFD1. All right. And I'm going to say Q0.0. Okay. Now under data type, watch this. I'm going to drag that UDT under PLC data types. I'm going to drag it over here. Okay.
You just weren't highlighted on it, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so. There it is. Same difference. My data type now, but check this out. It's actually grabbing a word of data and mapping 0 through 1.7.
So when you drop that drive into your hardware tree, you had to specify your Profi. You had to specify your I/O memory, right?
So when I brought focus to it and I created that safety telegram, it automatically I can change it if I want to change it, but it started at 0 because I have no I/O in here. Normally it's something,
We've had to segment all ours out. Like the drive starts at 600, robot starts at 700.
So you don't overlap.
And bot starts at 800. So just each one.
That's the proper way to do a system, so it's planned out. Normally Q0 is going to be taken up in your
let's see what Sean wants. He's blowing up my phone.
In your safety stuff. So, all right, we'll pause right there. All right, so we understand the peripheral data needs to go back and forth. Now in the safety block where I've drugged telegram 30 out to map to telegram 30, I can click on bring focus to my safety VFD tags, and I can click and drag this now and drop it, and it will properly p-pound Q
it's looking at a tag that is of the data type
of a point that points through that. Yes, absolutely. So that's that. So now that will operate just properly in our PLC. Now, a couple of things with a safety PLC, Chris, is often you have to, especially when you're online, you have to come over and compile, rebuild all. But it will just get in depending on where your focus is in the block structure, in certain function blocks, it will kind of freak out on you. And so by recompiling all the blocks, if you compile logic that's a higher level than the safety just throws up and it won't tell you why it won't compile. Okay. So after that, I can go ahead and do a download. We can make sure there's no little gotchas there with making these changes. Of course, I made a hardware change too, so it's definitely gonna stop due to that, and due to that I made a safety change. No other inconsistencies here, so I hit load. Okay, now it's going to start back up. The sinus speed block over here will reset VFD faults. So access is not enabled. It is an error, so you can toggle the error acknowledge bit, and I just cleared any faults on it, so it's good. Now, one thing it's doing is we're mapping safety telegram, but I don't have safety commission. So the next step in this is we have to commission the drive. So to do that, you have to go in line with VFD. Okay. What I do is select parameter. And then under drive functions, you probably did some basic safety commissioning. You want to go to safety integrated, and then this little hidden icon at the top here, it says start safety commissioning. You can do this through the keypad, by the way. If you have an IOP, it's just as easy. All right, default password is going to be 0 out of the box. 999 just to make it something, and it'll say password's been changed. And now I want to step through, and so you either have basic functions or extended functions like safe speed or what have you. We're going to keep it simple, just an STO. So we're going to do basic functions, and we're going to do a ProfiSafe. Okay. Depending on your application, I find these are usually okay without issue. We do not have to do an acceptance test anymore. We will actually complete an acceptance test via basically rebooting the drive, but you need to make sure it's easy. It'll want to skip selecting safety functionality. It'll jump over functions and take you right to acceptance test. So you have to back up. It's a little gotcha there. So here you need to select via ProfiSafe, unless you're using hardwired terminals and ProfiSafe, or if you're just using the terminals like you guys did at GTA, you just say terminals, right? STO selected, pretty straightforward. Nothing I need to do there. Test stop is between off times, so that means off on power cycle. And so it comes out of the box with
an hour.
Yeah, so you'll come in the next day and it's flashing with a warning. So I bumped this up to like 8,700 hours. So, somewhere within a year, you're probably going to cycle power on that panel. So
is it just looking for a
time.
Power cycle, or is it looking for the e-stop to be pressed?
Power cycle is my understanding. I've tested it both ways, and for some reason, just the e-stop test doesn't seem to get the warning, rid of the warning. So now, all right, this is the nuts and bolts of it right here. With ProfiSafe address, okay? What you have to do to figure out what this is, that's a hex 0, is you have to go back to your drive, bring focus where you set up that safety telegram. And when you do that, if you select drive here, okay, if you bring focus to drive, you get this send safety telegram. It gives you details on it. You see that F address, it's set to a 1.
Yep.
That's where you get the F address. That's the only place you can find the F address that I found. So what we need to do is go back over here where we're commissioning it, change that to just a 1. Okay. All right. Once that's done,
that'll be unique for each drive, or can you make all the drive? Yeah.
No, every ProfiSafe device will have its own individual ProfiSafe address. So then I'm just going to hit end safety commissioning. After doing this, make sure you do a RAM to ROM. Okay, so what it's doing is saying you must do a RAM to ROM, and it's also going to say that acceptance test is required. The best thing to do is completely 24 volt and high power down, because if you kill high power and you had 24 volts wired to your control unit, it's going to stay up and not do the acceptance test. And one way you can quickly do a RAM to ROM if you're just unsure is click on commissioning over here, and at the very bottom it's called save and reset. Click this save right here, and it'll do a RAM to ROM for you, and you guarantee. That's also a good place if you get the thing all messed up and tuning or whatever, you can full restore. We can power the drive down and wait for the discharge, and then you can power the drive back up. Now I've got a flashing fault, obviously because it had under voltage, and I saw the amber light come up, so it should think that it's going to be looking for safety here. Okay, red flashing light. Still in the boot process. Okay. All right, so make sure we save our project. The other thing again to do with this is just make sure you have downloaded your hardware. Make sure that the PLC, okay, it's talking about the firmware difference. I've had an issue where start drive would not function with a G120, and all it was I had a higher firmware than what the drive had. But if you select if you're not sure what the firmware is, if you select a version 0, it'll work perfect. But for some reason in start drive in my Explorer on the left side, it would never go in line with the drive. But if I did accessible nodes, it would find the drive and let me go online with it and do everything I needed to do. It was all just because the firmware is selected. And then to fix that, you right click on the device here in the hardware manager and just say change device, and you can select a different firmware. Okay. That's what we needed. So now I've got a flashing amber light. That means safety is there, ready to go, doing its thing, but we're not safe. So a few things in the safety logic here, and go on and monitor it. Probably requires a reset, I'm guessing. And being I don't have, I'm not sure if it'll even, so acknowledging we may need to make this a bit that we can actually toggle. Quickly change that. All right, make a safety change. So guess what? It's going to want to reload again. Okay. So that's pretty much it. I'm sending ProfiSafe data. The status, now that I'm simulating and I don't have all the safety inputs and stuff, this thing's not going to want to work right. Maybe let's set the act. That may fix us there. Let's just see if we can't get this thing farther than just simulation to actually showing us what we want. But that's it. Once I get my safety logic here where it's resetting, what it's doing, it's going to set that. Yeah, that blocks. Oh. It thinks my e-stop. Okay, there we go. So now I'm true on my STO, right? All right, and then so with that being said, modify that to a 0. Okay. Yep. I may need to to make this guy, make sure that global acknowledgement is actually toggling. And then I think what I had to do is this is looking for the inverse. So you normally close, so it'd be falling to acknowledge, right? Let's just verify the logic, because the output of that e-stop block is actually the inverse of what you think it would be. All right, so that's saying it's off. And then if I toggle, let's say that my e-stop, I push the button back in, so my input's true. This, if you don't want that to automatically clear, you set that to a 1, and it waits for the global acknowledgement. That acknowledgement in NEC, that's either automatic reset, like a light curtain, versus where you want a command, like with a reset push button. That's where you would change. You tell that block that you want to wait for acknowledgement. Okay, so now that I say modify to a 1, see it don't automatically trigger, and then when I trigger M50, that should toggle to reset, toggle that back off, and then when I come down here, STO's off, and we also, again, it's one or the other. It's inverse of one of those things. And then I'm sure we have a drive fault because let's see, lockout. Yeah, we're faulted here. So you'd want to, that reset button obviously would reset all your drives and everything. So you want to clear anything associated with the drive, and then make sure you have your toggle logic. It's kind of inverse of what you think it would be. So again, it may be when it's active that we have to have that on. I'd have to play with it and look at the help file real quick, but that's it. Couple little gotchas with the F address and commissioning that'll get you setting a tag up for the peripheral data, and that's it. I mean, I say that's it, but there's a few steps. It's easy to lose. It took like 4 manuals, and
yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I've never in my life seen a quick start guide for Siemens.
There's data parsed out there.
Yeah.
And it's like knowing where to get it. I put the manuals on that GoToMeeting invite.
We'll have to copy them onto our server. We're trying to get a DSI wiki going.
Yeah, that's going to be great.
So far, me, Eric, Sean, and Logan all have logins for it. But things like this, things like that, $P$, like just.
Yeah. Well, if you don't